Well, thank you, Steve, and hello to all of you out there in the land of webinar. My name is Jeremy Cioara, and I'd love to welcome you to something that we decided to call Beyond CCNA, Into the Server Room, which for me is probably one of the most unique, paradigm-shifting webinars that I've ever created, and I hope it is for you too. Now, it's going to be a little weird for me to talk about this because I'm used to talking about a specific technology like OSPF or subnetting or maybe a certification update. Hey, a new CCNA or CCNP in the Cisco realm is out. Here's what's new. But what I'm after in this webinar is to say by the time you're done here, you will know exactly how to know any technical concept. So I'm not after teaching a technical concept in here. I want to teach you how to learn. And this could be for somebody who's brand new into the IT space saying, well, how do I get started? How can I know all this stuff? How do I learn this stuff? Or maybe if it's someone who's been in IT for a long time, that's why I called, Beyond CCNA Into the Server Room. I'm after capturing people that are in the server room and saying, you know what, maybe my skills are obsoleting or I'm really kind of bored. I want to learn something new. What's the best way that I can go about learning a new technical concept or knowing it? And let me tell you a quick story, and I think it'll explain what I'm trying to communicate. A couple months ago, I had a guy at my house who was an auto mechanic. He was working on my car, and I was watching over his shoulder, just chatting with him because I know nothing about cars. And while we're chit-chatting, I said, "Well, how did you learn this? How did you learn how to work on cars?" And he looked at me, he goes, well, I went to school for it. And then he literally chuckled out loud. He laughed and he goes, well, I was in the classroom for maybe 2 days. And then he said, then we're out in the field and we're literally tearing cars down to the last screw and then putting them all back together because that's how you really learn something is you actually do it. And I did what I think a lot of us do when you hear something like that. You're like, oh, you kind of do the man grunt. Of course. How could anybody be so absurd to think that you would learn something any other way than actually doing it, right? I know some of you are like, maybe there's some absurdity abound. And that's kind of what we've started discovering as at CBT Nuggets. We've started putting together a new style of training that we call IT expertise. And let me say right up front, I am not after, getting everybody to be like, oh yeah, let's go take the IT expertise. What I want to tell you is what I've been learning as we've been creating these very unique trainings. I've started questioning myself. I'm like, oh my goodness, what have we gone so wrong in our education? Like literally, I'm up at night. I'm like, I think we've gone so astray in our educational systems because it's not at all what we should be teaching people. When I think about normal methods of learning, at least, and I'm going to talk about technology, we have college. You're 18 years old. You finish high school. What happens? You go to college because that's what you're supposed to do. And that, at least that's what I did. And I'm not saying, please hear, let me make sure I emphasize, don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying college or certifications or anything are bad. They're great. They get a lot of people launched into learning, and that's all good stuff. What I'm asking is there a better way? So when I went to college, I was 18 and I sat in that college counselor's office and she said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, what just about any 18-year-old does. I have no idea. And she goes, so what do you like? And I said, well, I kind of like computers. And she looked in her big book, because it wasn't online back then, of all these microfiche-sized programs. And she goes, oh, well, right here we have computer science, where you learn computer programming. And she's reading, Pascal and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds good. And so I spend the next 4 years of my life learning stuff that I'm still not sure is really relevant to my life at all. But I won't discover that it's not really relevant to my life until I get out of college and realize that I'm not going to use most of what I learned in college at all. Now, again, I'm not saying that college is bad. I'm just saying that, there's a lot of people that just go because that's what they're supposed to do, and they're not too sure why they're there. Now, I was thrilled when I learned certification. After I got out of college and I went into the real world, I came into the world of certification and I was like, oh my goodness, targeted education, stuff that people actually use. Like, back then it was Novell. I got into Novell and I can set up a server and this can immediately benefit the business. And that's where I want to come to my second story. And what I've started to see is, wow, you know what? There's some gaps here. I used to teach in a classroom all the time, and I was teaching a CCNA class. This is probably 10 years ago or so. I'm teaching a CCNA class, and I've got a student who's just on fire. He is so excited to get into the world of Cisco and CCNA, and you know, at the end of the class, he's like, dude, this is awesome. I know that you do consulting, because I mentioned that, and he goes, if you ever need somebody, you know, please call me, you know, email me. I would love to, even if I just come and hold cables for you or something. I just want to come and get that. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And so of course I completely forget after the class, because I get so many students about this guy, until he emails me. Probably about 2 months later, he emailed me and said, hey, I just finished my CCNA. I'm certified. Is the offer still out there to come help you? And it just so happened that I was doing a consulting job the next day. I said, hey, yep, actually, tomorrow I'm going to be at such and such site. You want to come along? And he's like, yeah. And so, bam, we end up in a server room. And he goes, okay, where do we start? And I said, well, first thing we got to do is patch in all the cables. And he looked at me, and it's funny because all this excitement that I saw in him just kind of faded. And he's like, patch in the cables? What does that mean? And I suddenly realized, oh my goodness, he's gone through the CCNA certification. He just finished the CCNA certification. He doesn't even know what it means to patch in a cable. And then I realized, I'm like, and why would he? Cisco doesn't make cables. They don't make, 2U post racks. They don't make UPS units. They don't make all kinds of stuff that's sitting literally in this server room. Do you see where I'm getting the title of this webinar from? They don't make all kinds of stuff, but in order to be successful doing this, you've got to be able to understand it. So I started realizing, you know what? There's really only two ways. Man, I get so excited. I got to slow down. There's really only two ways that you learn this. One is by the school of hard knocks. You actually finish your CCNA and you hope that somebody hires you. And when they hire you, walk in and you just, oh my goodness. And you take a leap and you just learn because now you're in the real world. And that's how a lot of people go. That's what I call the Rite of Passage, your first job. When you get out there and you realize that, hey, I'm now being paid to do something. I'm not paying to be educated. Somebody's paying me. So now I have this motivation that, my livelihood, the ability to provide for my family now rests on my ability to succeed in this. The second thing you realize is that you can't cheat this anymore. And when I say cheat, I'm not talking about unethical, although I'm sure plenty of that's out there. When people think certification and they think cheating, they think about, brain dumps and all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about that. And I don't even know if I can put words to what I'm about to say. But there's a way in education that you can kind of figure out the system. I know I'm really going to struggle putting words to this. Let me just, I'm going to use me as an example. I cheated the system of education. Oh man, I feel even wrong saying that. I feel like, some news media is going to capture that and play it and be like, haha, see? What I mean is, when I went to high school, my very first year, I did terrible. I don't even want to tell you my grades for my first year of high school. And it wasn't until my second year that I figured it out. It wasn't that I became suddenly more intelligent or that, now, oh, well, Jeremy's smart now, but I got all A's and B's my second year. It was that I figured out how to listen in the classes. I figured out what information I would need to learn to pass the exam. I figured out what homework assignments I needed to do and stuff I could get away just, kind of not doing or doing just, a half job on to get it in there. And that would land me at A's and B's. And then I went to college and my first year of college was terrible. What do you mean I don't have to go to class? Well, I'll take you up on that. It's like, okay, and I figured out, terrible first year. Then I kind of figured out how college worked. And I'm like, okay, I know how, you see what I mean? It's not that I'm cheating, literally like, copying somebody's answers from their test. I'm cheating the system because I'm just trying to pass an education. I don't see the relevance to the real world. Well, at your first job, when you've got that rite of passage, you can't do that. You're either going to succeed or you're going to fail. Everything's real in that job. Real people, real systems. When you make a real mistake and things really go down, you really feel that stress of like, oh my goodness, the whole corporation is crumbling because of a mistake that I made. I should have planned that better and all that kind of stuff. At your first job, you discover what really matters. For example, when you go to college, and tell me I'm not saying anything that's It's not rocket science. If you talk to anybody who's gone to college and you say, well, how much did you use of your college education? They'd probably say, 10%, 5%, 2%. It's kind of like, well, it was the experience that I gained in college that really matters. The experience of, I don't think I've ever been able to answer that question. Well, pinball. I played a lot of pinball in college. But you discover what really matters in the real world. You know what? In the CCNA program, there's all kinds of stuff. How much OSPF do you really deploy? How much RIP routing protocol do you really set up? How often do you use subnet networks and things like that in the real world? Well, you won't know that until you have that rite of passage, that first job, right? Last thing that you get is the unteachable topics. The things that there's no education that can prepare you for. And even if somebody tells you it's coming, you don't really know what to do until you actually are there. Like just a couple weeks ago, I'm on with a wide area network carrier for a couple sites in Texas. And I'm literally on the phone with them for 30 hours. They're escalating me through, I don't even know how many levels of escalation I went through. And they're blaming me about that. This is all my fault, that the WAN links are down. And I'm saying, no, it's not. It's your equipment. I didn't do anything. And it wasn't until 30 hours, literally 30 hours of calling back and forth. The site's down. People are going home from work. And they finally go, oh, it was a line card in one of our COs. Okay, we replaced. Okay, you're back online. I'm like, back online? Back online? You just cost me 30 hours of my life. You just cost the business 30 hours of productivity. What do you mean you're going to give me $1 credit because that's all that these are the unteachable topics. Did I really sign up for this job? These are the unteachable topics that you only learn when you have your first job. So here's what I'm after with the IT expertise. I know right now a lot of you are like nodding your head. Yeah, I get it. Well, as I get into the IT expertise world, that's where I started thinking, how do I create this environment, right? This is the impossible situation. Here I am, an instructor. And, 8 years ago, I started a company where we actually do the things that I teach. And even me, I've been teaching for 20 some years now. Even when I started this company, I was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I felt almost like a scam. I'm like, I had no idea this is what my students were encountering when they went in the real world. Yeah, of course the book said that, but how do I create this environment for them? And that's where we started collaborating with the IT expertise series, but that's where I started pulling out pieces. Again, I'm not after promoting that series as much as I want to teach you how you can learn. The first thing, and probably the most important thing that I think you can do when you are learning something is to say, I need a non-technical objective. This is the wall that so many IT people run into, is they look at technology as the objective. And can I say this? I'm going to say it twice because I want it to echo in your mind forever. Technology is an enabler. Say that with me. Technology is an enabler. It enables something. It is not an end in itself. It's a vehicle. A car is worthless if it doesn't drive, if it doesn't get you somewhere. A car is an enabler to get you to a destination. Technology is an enabler to accomplish some business objective. And what so many IT people do, and where their career ends, is they think about technology as an end in itself. Let me give you an example of this. At home, on my nightstand right now, is I wish I had a picture of it. Hang on one second. I'm going to grab a web browser. Here we go. I have a Grand Stream GXP 2160. It is an IP phone. This is it right here. I actually got this little gem off of a website. I don't even remember which one it is, for like $20 or something. And I was like, oh, brand new. And I bought it. And so I put it on my nightstand. This is probably about a month ago. And I was like, I'm going to set up that IP phone. That's a technical objective. And you know what? If I would follow my heart to the end, I would set up that IP phone. I would get it working. I don't know how I would get it working because it's not a Cisco phone. It's a SIP phone. I'd probably find some SIP provider or spin up a Linux instance of some hacked up SIP system and I'd get it running. I'd get dial tone and I'd be able to make a call. And I'd be like, awesome. I'm awesome. I accomplished a technical objective. I made an IP phone work. and it would sit probably on my wife's desk because that's where I would deploy, because I think, it's like every guy knows when you bring home, a new remote control for your wife for the television, she's like, oh, thanks, honey. That's kind of what my wife does all the time. Oh, thanks, honey. I love this new IP phone that sits right next to my cell phone that I use for everything because it's got all my contact. Why do I have this IP phone, honey? And I would say, because I don't know. And I'd put it back in the box and I'd put it away. It's the same thing as playing a video game. And I'm not trying to insult video games, by golly. If it weren't for video games, I don't know if I would have an interest in technology to even begin with. I think back to my Commodore Amiga and trying to download BBS games from there. So anyway, video games are a technical objective. You create this virtual world where you do things that don't really happen in the real world. You just do them on the screen and you feel like you accomplished something. But when you turn it all off, you haven't really accomplished anything at all, right? You've shot virtual guys who virtually died, but they didn't really virtually do anything. It's the same thing when you grab that Grandstream GXP 2160 out of the box and set it up. You created a phone, but it meets no business objective. And I'm spending so much time on this one first line item because so many IT people end here. They go, I can set up a router. Well, that's cool. But what does that really accomplish? I can set up a WAP, a wireless access point. Well, cool, but what does that really accomplish? What's your end goal? So when you're thinking about this, how does this benefit the business? I'll put BZ right there. How does this benefit a business or the business that you're working on? And maybe, so that's what you have to think of it. Technology is an enabler. Okay, how am I going to set up technology or package this in such a way that it benefits the business? Okay, you think you got something, right? Or maybe, and this is what I'm encouraging you to do, is figure something out, something beneficial, something that you would like, maybe even in your home. For instance, when I first started having kids, actually, this is even before that, when I first got a big old fish tank, I got a saltwater fish tank, which my kids eventually replaced. And I was like, man, I would love to look at my saltwater fish tank at work. And so I thought, how can I do that? And this is back in the day before there was even, IP cameras and things like that. I literally set up a little webcam, attached it to a laptop, and fished a cable, and it was glorious. I think I used NetMeeting, to watch my fish tank remotely. I was so proud of it. But at the end of the day, I accomplished something back then that would have really helped businesses. It could have been a security camera. That's where I'm starting to think about benefiting the business. How do you create something that truly benefits the business, not just a technical goal? So use your home. Figure out something in your home that you are there to build, there to accomplish, and then implement it. Once you feel good about it, that's when you start rolling it out to your company. I can't tell you how many times I've set up something in my house and I'm like, ooh, that's cool. And I start going to, I don't work for a company specifically, but I start coming to small businesses and I'm like, hey, I bet you guys would like a fish cam, but I don't call it a fish cam, right? I call it IP surveillance. Hey, I bet you guys would appreciate, filtered internet access. I bet you guys would like a voice over IP system that allows you to eliminate your phone lines and save cost every single month. And all of that is supported by, XYZ technology company, come up with a name for yourself or something like that. Or even within your own organization. Let me roll something out internally. This is how you branch into this. Now, you notice I have or go to church right over here. I get the number one thing that I get from students at CBT Nuggets is, okay, I've got a CCNA or I've got a, whatever entry-level certification that you've achieved. Now what? And I don't know what to say. I usually will say, well, you just start getting your application out there. And what I usually fall back to is do some volunteer work. But I have found literally a liquid gold mine of clients in churches. And it's one of those things where it's as easy as going to church. What other business do you think you could find that would welcome you in and give you, quote unquote, free service, if you will, to just, come and listen and meet people and start networking, if you will? And what you'll start doing, this is an easy client to start thinking about, here's how I can deploy some technology. Go to a small church. Go to just, a small little building, maybe 50 people, 100 people. And immediately after sitting down and comparing them to your house, you'll be like, wow, I bet you they would want a wireless network because they want internet access. I bet you, as I'm watching them sign in the kids for the nursery, I bet you they could use a child check-in system. I wonder how we could do that. Go home. You see where I'm going right here? Go home. Figure out how to create a child check-in system. We live in a software as a service world, so you'll be like, oh man, there's like 5 of them online. Let me try them out. They all have free trials. You try it out. You figure out a system to check in children, and you come back to that church, and you say, hey, pastor such and such. Hey, bishop such and such. Hey, whoever you meet there. I bet you I could set you up for a child check-in system. Well, in order to do that, we've got to, run some cable. Got to figure out how to do that. You got to, set up wireless. And you know what? I'm going to do all of this. And I know right about now, some people are going to be like, you're crazy. I'm going to do all of this for free. No, so I'll say, if you're just getting started in IT, that's the way to go. If you're already established and you're just looking like, hey, let's learn some new things. Let's start a business venture, whatever you want to do. Then, charge whatever, dollar value you want to and make that proposition. But if you're looking for that experience, oh my goodness, set up a wireless network, run some cabling, set up an internet access, set up content filtering, set up blah, 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 like my mind just explodes on all the things that you could do for that church for free and gain all the experience in the world that when you turn around and post for a job, you're no longer Bob who just got his CCNA. You're Bob who has, fill in all the things that you accomplish, going back and forth from that church to your house, figuring out a solution and delivering, figuring out a solution. Now, I'm not talking about, free like you're going to go buy the equipment. I'm just say, hey, here's the list of stuff you have to buy. They're not expecting you to buy stuff and then donate it all or something. Or if they are, find a different church. You know what I mean? Because you just say, just my time. I'll implement this for free. And you can be honest. Let them know, hey, I'm learning this. I'm starting to get into this new world. Okay, one more thing I want to show you, and that is the CBT Nuggets IT Expertise Series. Again, this is the series where a lot of these ideas came from, and our goal with this series was not to create a certain certification or specific technology or vendor or anything like that, but literally record what was real, what you really encounter out in the real world, and close that gap between, I guess you could call it, institutional education and your first job. There's that big gap where if people get a job after they get certified or get that college degree, there's like a year where they're like, oh man, it's like this fire hose of mistakes and knowledge that you have to gain to fill that gap between what you learned and what's actually real. So literally what we do in the IT Expertise Series is we go into businesses and we find places that are expanding into a new office suite, for example. That's where this picture came from, is a company who literally was expanding into a new office suite. It was empty when we walked in, needed to be cabled, needed network installation devices. We were speccing out what we needed to install, what cable needed to be ran, and we created that Series 1, which I can tell you how much feedback I've gotten on that series. It's astounding. I know a lot of you know me from the Cisco world, right? CCNA, those kind of things. The ratings that we've gotten on this course are even higher than we ever got on the CCNA. And the ratings on the CCNA series has been astoundingly good. So just to give you an idea, really, really amazing stuff. Just finished series number 2, which is taking this office suite and networking it back to the main, kind of building a campus, if you will, multiple switches, multiple connections. How do you set it up the right way? How do you make it not blow up? How do you find problems when they're all going wrong? And where I'm at right now is we've actually moved into a new business and are deploying wireless, which many people call the black art of IT, because when you get into the realm of radio frequency, there are no rules, right? There's a science to wireless, but there's so many variables that are involved in getting it right that a lot of people do call it a black art, right? And so this is probably the most gritty series that I think I've created so far, to where it's like, well, hey, the books tell you this on deploying wireless, but it's not like that at all. You gotta, take a totally different approach, because in theory, yes, putting that there would work, but in reality, it simply doesn't. So this has actually been a crazy series that I'm building right now, and then you can see where I'm planning to go from there. There is so much more that I could explain, and so many avenues I want to go down, and to things that you could do with this. But my hope is that when you're thinking about learning, the fastest road that you can take to make it real Meaning to go out into that yard, tear that car down to its last bolt, and put the whole thing back together, even when the rod doesn't fit back where it's supposed to. Figure it out and do that in the context of nonprofit organizations, of volunteer works. That is the fastest way to, number one, learn the topics, and two, open doors of opportunity that you don't even know were there all along.